Welcome back. In this video, we'll talk about how to add a button or how to add an event, right? So to add an event here, so what we need a button, right? So what we'll do, we'll say button, okay? We'll say button B, okay? So let's import the package. So we have to give the memory, right? So go to this label. Again, in this code, we don't want label. We just want a button, right? So we'll remove the remaining part to make it much easier. So what I have a button, I have a layout. So to create this object button, we say b equal to new button, and we have to give some caption, right? So we'll say okay. So and then afterwards I have to add this b to my frame. So we'll say add b. Now if I run this, uh, you can see we have a button here, right? So we have a button okay here. But what I want, when I click OK, what it should do is it should print here OK. So it should print here OK. So what we can do is first thing, by default your button is dump and diff. Okay, so to make it to make it listen to your event, so when you click it should listen to your event, right? To make it listen, what we can do is we can just add a listener. So we say add action listener. So by this it will add a listener to your button so that when you click on it, it will listen. So you are not your now your button is not deaf. But the problem is, if you can see on this constructor, what it will do is, see here, when you use add action listener, you have to pass an object of action listener. That means first you have to create object of action listener, then you can call this, right? But the problem is how to create object of action listener. The problem here is action listener is an interface. Oh, now that's the problem, right? Because you can create object of a class. Can you create of an object of an interface directly? No. We don't create object of interface. We can create a reference of interface, right? But here they need object. So what we can do, we have to search for a file, or we have to search for a class which already implements that interface called as action listener. But unfortunately, we don't have any class which implements action listener. So what we can do, we can ourselves implements action listener. So that means now when I create object of my frame, I'll be getting object of frame, and I will be getting object of action listener, right? Again, we have to import this package. So Control Shift I, package is imported. Now when I create object of my frame, I will get object of frame, and when I will create object of my frame, I also get object of action listener. Since we are getting object of action listener, if you pass this, now what is this? This means the object of the same class, right? Now this object or this keyword is the object of my frame, it's the object of frame, is the object of action listener. So we are successful to get object of action listener, right? Now the problem is, since we are implementing an action listener which is an interface, we have to define all the methods. Belongs to action listener. And the good part is there's only one method which is there in action listener, and that method name is public void it's action performed, and here we have to pass an object of action event. Okay. Now why action event we'll see later, but time being we have to select action perform and action event. And this, once I click a button, our button was dump and diff, right? So we have added a listener so that when you click on that button, it will add a listener. So once it added a listener and you click on it, it will call action perform. Okay, and what to do in action perform is we have to print okay. So once again, you have a button, right? To make your button listen to some event or some click, you have to add a listener, because by default your buttons are diff. And then you have to pass object of action listener. Since we don't have object of action listener because it's an interface, we have to implement that action listener here, so that when you create object of your own frame, my frame, you will get object of action listener, and that's why we are passing this here. Now since we are implementing action listener, we have to define all the methods, that is your action perform here, and in that we'll say okay. Now when I run this, okay, so you can see this is your output area, nothing is there. Now when I say okay, we have okay here, right? If I say okay, we have okay here. That means when you click, it's listening to some event and it's calling action perform. So this is your code for button, and for the remaining video we'll see in next video. The remaining part we'll see in next video, and do subscribe for the further videos. Thank you so much.